Hi, welcome to our next installment of Get Busy with Bradley Zink. I'm children's book author and California governor candidate Bradley Zink. Thank you for tuning in for our next episode. Before we start the show, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, the Ronnie Lee Group. And that was a soundbite from their recent single, Prisoner. Thank you, Ronnie Lee Group, for your sponsorship. I greatly appreciate your support. So, last episode we discussed, I mentioned and discussed there's Ronnie Lee Group. Thanks again for your support, guys. Thanks, Joe. Um, Last episode we discussed the lack of mainstream media coverage on the upcoming June primary, which we're now exactly 1 month away. By the way, this is May 7th, so June 7th. Exactly 1 month from today is the June primaries. As you've noticed, there's been next to no mainstream media coverage, let alone any media coverage, it seems, on such an important upcoming primary election for the state of California and the future of how we're going to be led and who's going to be leading us. Hence one of the reasons why I do this podcast, just so I get my message out there to the broader audience of, my particular support of different issues, how I am going to approach all the different problems that we have plaguing us here in California and in the country today, and feasible, workable solutions that I propose to fix these problems that we seem to be exhibiting, like the housing crisis, water shortages as we're coming into the hot months. Summer's coming up here in California. The electrical crunch. I've been reading in the news since there's no coverage of the upcoming primary election, I've been reading the other things that are actually being covered in the news, like, the wildfire threat that's looming. People forget to realize that the current administration actually shut down the prisoner inmate firefighting training program, which I believe is over 1,000 trainees that they had for that program. That helped fight the wildfires that we see year after year here in California. But anyway, one of the things that I'd like to discuss and cover today is, without going into specifics of naming names, what other candidates have discussed and how they're approaching the upcoming June primaries and what they have to offer. Since there's very little research to go on of any of the candidates, since mainstream media has not been covering it at all, I go to their websites that they have for each of the candidates. One of the websites that I have up here, one of the issues that one of the candidates for governor is discussing is California experience. This is for the issue of the economy. California experienced a net loss of 2.6 million people to other states over the past decade. Since the pandemic, nearly 40,000 businesses have closed. The plan: we need to repeal the gas tax. First off, that doesn't really address the 40,000 plus businesses that have closed here in the state of California since the global pandemic that started back in March of 2020, when the current administration started shutting down all of the small businesses. Seems how the state continually told us how they are going by scientific approach of why the closures would happen and how they happened. You would seem that with a scientific approach, you would want to minimize the gathering of the largest amount of people possible in one location. So instead of doing what they should have done, which is closing the big box stores, like the Costco's, the Walmarts, the Targets, the ones that employ only about 150 to 200,000 people in the state of California, instead they chose to close down the small businesses. To let you know, there's over 7 million residents in the state of California work for small businesses. Hence the reason why we had a dramatic spike in unemployed during the shutdown of 2020. You have to realize that with 7 million residents working for small businesses that were closed and only 200,000 working for the large box stores, where they would see roughly 100 to 200 customers an hour. There's a lot of small businesses, they hope for 100 to 200 customers, say, a week or a month just to stay in business. And the big box stores were experiencing, and continue to experience on a daily basis, 1 to 200 people an hour coming through their doors. If they had closed down all of the big box stores, only 200,000 would have been unemployed instead of the 7 million that work for small businesses. Um, but anyway, to suggest, that about the repeal of the gas tax, one thing that candidates do is they have something to say. Here, they get that knee-jerk response from people. Here, the economy is hurting. State of California pays the highest in gas taxes of any state in the country. Let's repeal the gas tax. I believe the current average for the state gas tax is about 51 cents per gallon. Um, that money that was collected by the state in the gas tax funds your infrastructure, paving your roads, rebuilding bridges, filling potholes in your city. That's where that money is obtained through the state. For every penny of gas tax equates to $178 million collected by the state for infrastructure payments, budget money. So if you were to repeal the gas tax of 51 cents, you're talking tens of billions of dollars that would be removed, that the state depends on in tax collection to be able to afford the upkeep of our infrastructure, to continue to build out our infrastructure. If you take that tens of billions of dollars, I believe it's about $24 billion roughly a year. If you take that money away from the infrastructure, you would have to make up somewhere else in a different tax to get those checks and balances going to be able to budget for the state of California. You figure our state budget, annual operating state budget, is $168 billion. If they remove $24 billion from the gas tax, you're going to see an additional increase in, say, your property tax. How they try to pass, at least here in San Diego County, a driving tax of, they would tax you based on how much you drive, a tax, just to try to get pushed to the public transit system. That's not the way to go about handling these issues. And repealing the gas tax would have a huge hit to the taxpayers here in California, in the form of additional tax increases somewhere else, or budget cuts. In the first place, where they always do budget cuts in the state of California, and in most states, unfortunately, is the education system. So instead of proposing continually ways to cut taxes and not telling the public, the voters, how they're going to make up that difference in taxes, we need to hear more plans of how the state or how the candidates plan to generate revenue. If you check out my Facebook page, www.facebook.com/GetBeasy in 2022, or just search Bradley Zink for California Governor 2022. You'll see how I've, in just my podcast and different postings, the proposed solutions that I have for the issues that are plaguing California that doesn't increase taxes for anyone, plans to create jobs and generate revenue outside of the tax spectrum for the state of California, thus easing the tax burden on you and me. Let's bring up another candidate that we have here, and what they consider are the pertinent issues to discuss in the campaign, and what little they have to discuss about it. Education. Here we go. This is a good one. California schools are failing our children, with just 30% of children proficient in math and 50% proficient in reading. Different places that you research will tell you different statistics, but California is, I believe, ranked number 34th, 28th to 34th in the country in public education in the country, which is sad, being the number 5 GDP in the world. Let's see. One of the things that they propose is the school day should be longer so younger children can rest during the school day and older children can get proper physical education, um, making the school day longer when you're not already paying the teachers enough, and you're continually year after year, the state of California is cutting the budget of the public school system. That sounds like it would be a hard sell for any parent teacher union. Hence the reason why this candidate's not getting any endorsements from the teacher unions or any teacher groups in California, or parents for that matter. Um, Making the school day longer is not going to help with the education system in the state of California. Helping them generate revenue, like I said in one of my podcasts, a way for the public schools to generate revenue is to selling the naming rights to their football stadiums or their baseball fields, their soccer fields, even their libraries on campus to, any one of we have in the state of California, 53 of the Fortune 500 companies in the world are here in the state of California. Over 170 of the Fortune 1000 companies in the world are here in California. Sell the naming rights to $150,000 a year. That's a way for the schools to generate revenue. It's a tax write-off for the corporations who could save some face in the light of how little they pay in taxes, if at all, to begin with. It greatly takes the dependency of the public school system off the state, who's continually cutting their budget year after year. Let's see. Let's take on another candidate's outlook on how things are. Also, one thing you'll notice if you go to any of the candidates' direct websites for the election is you'll always see that donate button there. No matter where you scroll, no matter what page you go to, donate, donate, donate. Running the campaign, or at least their approach, is it costs money. Yes, it does, and no, it doesn't. I've spent, I think, $125 so far campaigning, if you will, in the current election. Now people say, oh, you have no chance. Understand the mental aspect of my approach to campaigning. Getting your name out there. As everyone recognizes one of these last week, the entire state, if you're a registered voter, you received one of these in the mail. There was more than, I believe it was 7 to 10 million of these were sent out last week. My name's in there as one of the candidates for the governor of California. That went out to 10 million households, and it didn't cost me anything. It's part of being one of the governor candidates. Each one of the counties continually sending out your sample ballots. Here's one for Siskiyou County. Here's the one for LA County. I already got the one for San Diego County. There's dozens of counties in the state of California. I believe it's 53, if I'm not mistaken. Each one of them go into all the registered voters there, putting my name in there. Doesn't cost me anything for that mailer. It's part of the process of qualifying for being a candidate for the governor of California. So it's not necessarily how much money you can raise to fund your campaign, because there's other approaches to campaigning that do not cost money. Here's one of the things that I find atrocious about all the other candidates and their websites is hitting you up for a donation. If you want my vote, and you're continually asking for my money as well, there's a reason for that. Namely, the two-party system has caused this reasoning behind campaign and campaign contributions and funding campaigns. If you're a registered candidate for one of the two parties, whether Republican or Democrat, you have quotas to meet, if you will, to be one of their party representatives. One is fundraising for your own campaign. That's how they determine whether or not you're a strong enough candidate to represent their party. The second is, and a lot of people may not realize this, is they also are supposed to raise X amount of funds to contribute to the general coffer of the party that they represent, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, to help fund, other elections throughout the state and throughout the country, such as your Senate seats, your county, your assessor seats, your controller seats, things of that nature, state chamber seats. That's why you're always going to see donate, 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 donate. Now, when your candidate that you just gave your money and support to because you strongly believe in what they're standing for, you believe their stance on the issues, blah blah blah. You send your money to them, hoping to get them onto the November general election, um, but they fail to qualify in the June primary. When you're a candidate, you have pretty much three options of what you can do with your campaign funds that you've raised. Um, First is you can keep it in your coffer, your campaign coffer, or your bank account, if you will, for your campaign. For a future campaign, you may run for a different office or the same office in another 2 or 4 years. So you can keep your money in your campaign fund account. Second thing you can do, you don't plan on continuing campaigning for any other seat, you roll it over to the general coffer of the party that you represent, whether it's Republican Party or Democratic Party. Third option that people may not be aware of is the fact that they could also donate it to a 501c3 charity. Public schools qualify as that. For the ones that candidates you continue to see, pushing for funding the schools, more funding for the schools, than when their campaigns were over and they still have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or even millions, depending on what position they're running for and how much they raised their campaign. Once they decide that they're not going to run for another office, instead of rolling it over to the party they represent, they have the ability to run it. Donate the money to the public schools, as they claim that more funding for the schools, but have a perfect opportunity to give them those funds, but rather fund the party that they represent and the candidates that are truly being supported by the party for the different positions that they're running for. One of the things that I also have noticed is if when you go to their websites is the vaguity of what they stand for. They point out an issue like homeless is an issue, but this is something that affects California. Seeing that we have, I believe it's roughly 25 to 30% of the country's population of homeless live here in California. Majority of that population residing here in Southern California. They all point out on their websites how it's an issue, but don't actually address what they propose to do as governor to address that issue, what they propose to do, just in their campaign, telling us what their approach to this issue is. A lot of them, as I'm looking through them, is just stating, here's a problem in the state of California. Oh, well, as a voter, for the same party that this person represents, I believe that's an issue in the state of California too, therefore I'm going to vote for them. They're not even telling you any information. That's why I tell you, research each of the candidates. You'll notice that a lot of them don't supply you with any information on the website. The big draw of their website is to get you to donate to their campaign fund and also to their party's fund. One of the candidates on here has the most simplest website of all, which is amazing, seeing as how it's a very important election, that they only tell you about themselves and how you can contribute to their campaign fund. They don't discuss any of the issues that are plaguing the state of California or how they even want to discuss trying to, an approach to how they are going to solve any of these problems. And that just is a little hint, because it's an easy one to figure out. That's our incumbent. He's only telling you about himself and donate to the Democratic Party, donate to his campaign fund. That's not going to help solve any of the issues when mainstream media is not covering any of the candidates in this election, and there's little to no information on their own websites discussing the problems in detail, discussing their solutions to these problems. Um, just like I've stated in other podcasts, it's reminiscent of the recall election that we had last year. The big push is for donate, donate, donate. You have to understand that they want our votes. They should also be insisting on getting our money. They already get enough of our money through taxation, um, whether it be property taxes, property insurance for our homes. That as they continue to build in high fire and high flood zones, um, you're going to see, what you're seeing in the news, which is increases in being able to obtain fire insurance for your home, increases in flood damage insurance for your home. Some people being rejected for renewing their policies for the simple fact that um, the area that they're living in now is got even higher density of people, thus increasing the chances of wildfires in the areas that they're building. You have all of this usable land, as I've pointed out in multiple podcasts, along the border that can be developed, forcing development over there and away from the high flood and high wildfire areas, reducing those issues. These are solutions to problems as opposed to just pointing out, here's a problem, vote for me. So please, when I say research, don't only research the main candidates because they're part of the Republican Party or they're part of the Democratic Party. Research the NPPs like myself. Research myself. You can simply just search Bradley Zink for California Governor 2022, and you'll be able to see all the different political websites that I have all my information, how what issues I think are the most crucial in this upcoming election, how I will approach addressing these issues and solving them, not doing these band-aid fixes, but actually solving the issues that are plaguing California. You can find all of those details in all the numerous sites that you can find on me, Bradley Zink for California Governor 2022. Back to my point that I was bringing up about the little amount that they tell you on their websites. There's also when they take the approach of, we need to repeal this tax or we need to reduce this tax. One thing that they fail to mention, and a lot of people just don't take the time to do the research, is to see, as the governor of California, do they even have the actual authority, the power to be able to make such changes to the California legislation as governor, and not it just being an empty campaign promise. One of the big points that was being pushed through by several of the candidates during the recall election last year was, let's do away with the personal income tax for X amount of income that either a single or a couple brings in. I believe a lot of the candidates were pushing for repeal of the personal income tax for individuals at $50,000 and for couples $100,000 or less, repealing the personal income tax. Sounds like a great idea, but no one probably stopped to even research to see, as governor of California, do you have the ability to do that? They just like the idea, so they vote for that person because I like that idea that they came up with. This is why I push continually in my podcasts and on my websites to research the candidates. Also research what issues and the stances that they take. Also research, are they capable of being able to do that? In the state of California, to be able to repeal the personal income tax, it takes the governor does not have the authority to do it, first and foremost. That's decided by the state legislature. And seeing as how both chambers of the state legislature are led by the Democratic Party, you're never going to see them do away with the personal income tax. And that's why you'd only see Republican candidates that were pushing for repealing the personal income tax. A second point that I want to bring out on repealing personal income tax is California is the 5th largest GDP in the world. A lot of people know that. A lot of people don't know what their number one source of revenue is in the state of California. to save you the time and having to research it, or feel free to fact check me, um, the number one source of revenue in the state of California is through personal income tax. So you're never going to see this state or any state that has it as their number one source. You're never going to see a company cut their number one source of revenue. It will never happen. It sounds like a great idea, but it's not even possible. What you want to do is curb the overspending by your current administration, by the Democratic Party, by the Republican Party as well in the state of California and the country as a whole. Since I'm running for California governor, I'm going to approach just how it plays out in the state of California. To be able to truly reel in the overspending of our government in this state, there's only two ways that's ever going to happen. One of them is having an NPP or no party preference candidate be elected the governor of California. That way, they don't play favors to either of the two parties, and it gives the voting public leverage on the inside at the highest elected office that you can in the state. The second way to reel in the overspending of the Democratic Party, specifically in the state of California, is in electing, and I'm not one for endorsing candidates, but I am one for endorsing ways to reduce the spending by our state, thus reducing our taxes in the state. And one of those main ways, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, is by removing the trifecta and trizacta of politics in the state of California and the democratic rule that we have in all the highest elected positions in the state. One of the key positions in the state of California is the California controller, who controls the money and approving the funds being given to these different pet projects of the state, different budget constraints, but the different budget allocations for the different projects, such as addressing the homeless and addressing the housing crisis, affordable housing, things, infrastructure, things of that nature. As long as you have all Democrats, then there's no leverage for the taxpayer. But in having a Republican state controller, that's the only true way to reel in the overspending by the state and by the Democrats in this state. Fortunately, in this election especially, we have a wonderful candidate. And this, like I said, this isn't my endorsement for this candidate, but my endorsement for removing that power that the Democrats have in our state is Lan He-Chen, who's running for state controller. In having a Republican state controller like Lan He-Chen and an NPP candidate like myself, Bradley Zink, as the governor, will be able to truly have the authority and power over the Democratic Party and the legislature to be able to reel in that overspending of our tax dollars, thus being able to truly reduce the taxes that you and me and all the taxpayers in the state of California are facing. That's about it for my podcast this week. Next week, we're going to continue on the election and the differences that I'm noticing in not only the San Diego County ballot, but also how it differs from the Los Angeles County ballot, which also differs from the Siskiyou County. And throughout the week, I'll be receiving more and more of these from every county. As a candidate as governor of California, we're fortunate enough to receive all of this, so I'm able to give you inside view of politics and how it truly works in the state. And you'll discover in my next podcast how the way that they lay out the election process in the state of California isn't actually executed the way that they've described, the way that we voted upon, and the differences from county to county, and even in North County, San Diego, and East County, San Diego, how the ballots are different. So we'll be discussing those topics and more controversial things on how elections are run in this state on our next episode of Get Busy with Bradley Zink. Once again, I'd love to thank our sponsor this week, the Ronnie Lee Group. I appreciate your sponsorship and your support of my show and my candidacy for governor of the state of California. I love you guys. Keep on winning those awards and doing what you do, which is bringing people together, using music as their medium to bring people together. And as a governor candidate for this fine state, that's what I'm trying to do, is bring the people of this fine state together so we can elect the right candidates for the right positions and get control of our state back. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Get Busy with Bradley Zink, and I'll see you next time. Take care.